Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 124. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad to be back with you guys here on this Monday show. Dave coming out of the 2022 NFL Draft Weekend, kind of putting a bow on some things and finally getting a little bit of rest. But today it's been already a very busy Monday morning.
Did you see the sun yesterday?
I did. It kind of burned my skin a little bit. I hadn't been used to that big yellow ball in the sky, but yeah, got outside for once.
What's the weather like over there right now?
It was rainy. It's in the 50s. I don't know. It was in the 30s like last week, so we'll take it.
So you got outside for the rain then. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That wasn't a marathon yesterday.
It was.
Yeah, that's right. I saw some clips of that. Some rain on the ground.
You came in what? Second place, I think.
Second place. The marathon.
In the marathon.
Yeah,
I saw you running. Yeah.
You know, I at one point in my life when I was a little bit younger, I tried to get into the whole running thing and all like that, but the ice cubes, from my mixed drink kept jumping out of the glass when I run, kept spilling my beer when I tried to run like that. So I gave up running as a hobby pretty quick there. But that's another reason. That's
a Ron White joke right there or something. That's pretty good then.
Yeah, absolutely. Or did David Lee Roth say that? I don't remember.
No, I think you're making that. It just sounds like something like very like blue collar comedy tour. That's a good joke.
I think initially. I think it was a David Lee Roth quote in there somewhere. By the way, David Lee Roth was the lead singer of Van Halen. I know I have to explain. I'm starting to have to explain this stuff all the time now because I don't know whether or not you know. You know who David Lee Roth is, don't you, or not?
I've heard the name, but I could not tell you if he was part of Van Halen. That's probably a very disappointing way to start the podcast, so I apologize.
I guess Van Halen to you had Sammy Hagar in it, huh?
I guess. Barely. I know the name Sammy Hagar, but if you told me what band he was in, I probably couldn't have told you Van Halen. I think I could have told you like rock, some sort of rock band, but that's about it.
Well, way before Sammy Hagar, I Can't Drive 55. He was a solo artist before Van Halen, and even before that, some of his better stuff. I'm not a huge Sammy Hagar fan, but going way back, Sammy Hagar was in a band called Montrose, and you heard that song "Rock Candy" and "Bad Motor Scooter," and those older rock songs are Sammy Hagar on lead vocals there. And as a Van Halen purist and snob as I was back in the late 70s, early 80s, it was very hurtful when David Lee Roth left Van Halen, and I was not a big fan of Sammy Hagar coming in and being the replacement, replacing David Lee Roth as the lead singer. And yeah, there's a couple of good songs in the what we like to affectionately call Van Hagar, but just not as good as some of that early stuff. So there's your rock history for on this Monday morning. It is Monday, by the way, right? Because for some reason yesterday felt like Monday. Maybe it's just because of the long 3 days in a row there. But we still got a little bit to talk about here on this Monday.
We do. Just kind of wrapping up our thoughts here, a little bit of news on the Steelers undrafted class as well. I do want to start, though, with an interesting story from Peter King today for Pro Football Talk. He was in the Baltimore Ravens war room during the draft, at least on day 3, and kind of had an insight to that whole process and how it worked. And Baltimore had 6 picks in the 4th round this year. I think an NFL record that is. And so, according to King, the Ravens were going to draft wide receiver Calvin Austin III to pick 139. And then, of course, at pick 138, the Pittsburgh Steelers took him. So it was a little bit of a insight into the reaction of the Ravens war room once Austin went off the board. So had Pittsburgh not taken him, they would have been playing against him twice a year.
Didn't I say on the podcast the other day that it's a good thing the Steelers got him there, because I'm willing to bet that the Ravens would have liked to have that kind of player? Or was that the
Did
one
you?
we were talking about?
I
I thought it was.
don't remember. I trust you.
How many fourth round picks did Baltimore end up making in that
6.
draft?
All 6. I don't think they traded any of them.
How would you like to have been at Ravens Depot trying to blog that one? And here's to the Steelers never doing that, at least while I'm alive.
Same here.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. What they went Daniel Falele, which you could almost a little bit say touche there, right? Because that was one of the guys at the Steelers we thought might have had interest there with the offensive line coach going to the Minnesota Pro Day there. And then who else did they wind up taking in that round? Looks like they took Jalen Armour Davis, another guy that we kind of had maybe potentially being a fit with the Steelers out of Alabama. Oh, look, a shock. Ravens drafted an Alabama player. Huge shock there. Not. And let's see here. Charlie Collard, the tight end out of Ohio State. Interesting selection there. Jordan Stout. That was an interesting pick, right? Wasn't that the first punter or really specialist off the board out of Penn State? And makes you kind of wonder what's going to happen with
Sam Cook.
Yeah, Sam Cook, who's been there since way before you were born, I think. It feels like pretty much on that. And who else did they take? Isaiah Likely, another tight end. Demarion Williams, a cornerback out of Houston, they took in that round as well too there. So the pick that the Steelers got was right ahead of, I guess, where was the Steelers pick in that? Oh, it was right before the Isaiah Likely pick there. So,
right, it was one ahead of Baltimore.
Right.
Yeah. Baltimore was going to take Austin in the 139, and then they take Likely because Austin was off the board.
Hey, touche, where this kind of stuff we always seem to hear about. It being, another AFC team sniping a player from the Steelers, right? A pick before, but this time it's good to kind of hear the shoe being, on the other foot this time.
Yeah, it does. I'm glad Pittsburgh doesn't have to face that kind of 4-3 speed. And interestingly, despite all the picks that Baltimore had, they did not draft a receiver, I don't believe, in this entire class. And I think DeCosta made references to they wanted to try to draft a receiver, just didn't work out. And things like Calvin Austin going one pick ahead of where Baltimore would have taken them appear to be examples of that. But listen, Baltimore had 3 fourth-round picks ahead of Pittsburgh. They took a punter. I have no sympathy for Baltimore in general, and certainly not when you have 3 picks and 3 chances to draft them and you elect not to.
Oh yeah, look, the story looks good in a headline, but they had their shot for sure. You can't tell me that punter wouldn't have maybe lasted a few more picks there. Who knows? What are they going to do at wide receiver now? And I think the jury, and without turning this too much into Ravens Depot, but we haven't really looked around the rest of the AFC yet to kind of see what teams have done there. The jury's still out a little bit on Rashad Bateman. I think he, started to come on into his own later last season there. But what else do they have at wide receiver right now? Obviously, Miles Boykin isn't there anymore. He's a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. So they have Bateman. They have Devin Duvernay, who I was a big Duvernay guy coming out, but quite honestly, it feels like he's more James Washington than the kind of upside maybe in there. James Prochet, I think, is a guy that both of us kind of liked coming out. What was that? SMU? Wasn't he an SMU kid there? And then you look behind him, Tylan Wallace, I believe, was the Oklahoma State kid. And then, you don't know terribly much about the 2 others in Benjamin Victor, I think, and Jalen Moore on down the depth chart there. And they did not draft a wide receiver, correct?
Oh, sorry, allergies killing me this time of year. Yeah, they did not draft a receiver. And so that was, of all the draft picks they had, that was the one need they did not seem to address. But again, it seems like they just couldn't find the right fit. It was a big receiver run early in the draft. They take Kyle Hamilton at 14 because the value was probably so good there. Never found a way to take a receiver.
Yeah, so cover Mark Andrews and a lot better, and maybe you'll have a chance against them.
Right, but obviously they're going to get back to their ground game, and they're going to have their guys healthy this year with all the injuries they had last year of Dobbins and Edwards, et cetera. So yeah, I guess just to look at the AFC North in general, I think Baltimore still had a very good draft. Not getting Austin, aside. When you go Hamilton, Linderbaum, Jabo is going to be probably a stash player, but that could be really good value in the second round. Travis Jones is a great system and scheme fit for them. And then they did well overall in the mid to late rounds. So I think still Baltimore had a ton of picks, which is kind of their MO, is just have a bunch of picks and cast a wide net, which I think is a smart approach to teams to draft. The more picks you have, the more chances you have to hit. They probably know that they're not as smart as they think or they hope they are, that you're going to miss on guys. When you have a ton of picks, you're going to be bound to hit on a couple of them.
Yeah, once again, it's good to hear the Steelers. It's usually these things going the other way. The whole William Jackson thing, and I mean, just over the years, it has felt like, especially with the Ravens, particularly, it feels like you come out of these drafts and they end up with a lot of Steelers, players there, and they obviously did this year as well too. But to know specifically, to have the firsthand account by Peter King. That's a pretty good thing to wake up to on Monday morning.
Yeah, and it was a cool article. So Peter King sometimes says and does questionable things, but I enjoyed that one that he wrote this morning. Looking at the Bengals draft briefly, they go pretty secondary heavy in this one. Dax Hill at number 31, Cam Taylor-Britt with their next pick at number 60 overall. Then they kind of go trenches with Cordell Volson and Zachary Carter. They take a guy I like in Tyson Anderson in the 5th round, a guy you like in Jeffrey Gunter in the 7th round. So I thought, I wonder what it means for Jesse Bates in his future with the team, with all the kind of free safety types being taken, but DB heavy draft for the Bengals. Yeah,
you almost kind of wonder what is going to happen with Jesse now at this point. They obviously have until this, week 1 or so. We'll see what happens with the negotiations there, and obviously see if the Minka negotiations end up impacting that, or vice versa. The Steelers will obviously get something, or we think will obviously get something done with Minka at some point during the offseason. I wouldn't expect talks of that to start heating up until the team hits training camp, though.
Right. And then a quick look at the Browns. They don't have a lot of picks. They traded back at a 44 to get more picks, which is probably a smart and shrewd move overall. Go Martin Emerson, the corner from Mississippi State, with their first pick, 68 overall. I kind of called him a poor man Sauce Gardner. Alex Wright in the 3rd round. David Bell, which to me is Jarvis Landry 2.0. Perry and Winfrey in the 4th round. Good value there. Cade York, they go kicker, the first kicker to be taken. And then running back and a couple of late Oklahoma kids. So I thought, again, another decent draft considering the Browns didn't pick in the top 2 rounds.
Well, that Perry and Winfrey at the Senior Bowl, that guy looked pretty sharp.
He did. And so it's a question of why that guy fell to the 4th round. And maybe I think some people were wondering, why didn't he look like that during the season? And why did he kind of show up in a big way just for that Senior Bowl?
Okay.
So that's the AFC North overall. I thought no team drafted poorly in the AFC North. I thought Baltimore probably had the best draft, but I think you can make arguments that every team kind of mostly did what they wanted to accomplish. But again, very happy to see Calvin Austin in Pittsburgh instead of in Baltimore.
Absolutely.
Any other draft thoughts? I've not had really any time to go through any more tape yet on some of these guys. I think you've gone through them a little bit more in the last 24 hours than I have, but any new thoughts on the Steelers picks?
Not globally. I mean, we could obviously talk a little bit more about some of the tape that we watched on him. And I put up the annual Steelers Depot redraft exercise. That's always interesting when you lay it out, I think, the way that I laid it out there. And if listeners haven't seen it yet, I think it's still, you can find it still on the front page of SteelersDepot.com. What we do is we categorize and really block them out in colors. The prospects that were drafted, either the prospect the Steelers actually drafted with a pick on down to their next selection. So whatever group of players that is in between the Steelers selection, including the selection that they made, you can have a choice of redrafting those players. Now, obviously it's not foolproof, and nothing says you can't reach outside of that group of players, but it just gives, I think, a little bit of perspective of the players that were off the board with certain picks versus players that were still on the board at certain picks, and kind of forces the readers, to redraft maybe what they would have done within a set of parameters there. And these are always fun to go back and look at a year later. And, we've got obviously some interesting comments. I think we've had 55 or so people comment on the redraft post there. When you look at it, first round specifically, Alex, and we sort of hit on this the other day here. When you look at the 32 other people drafted after Kenny Pickett, and then you start removing, because of the quote unquote rules associated with the Steelers, if you want to play by those rules, and in other words, removing the players that Kevin Colbert was not at the pro day, you only have about, I think, 9 players at that point. You have Kenny Pickett, you have Quay Walker from Georgia, you have Devontae Wyatt from Georgia, you have Daxton Hill, Lewis Seen, going down the list here, Andrew Booth Jr., John Mechie III, the wide receiver out of Alabama, David Jabo, Fedarian Mathis, the defensive tackle out of Alabama, and I believe that's it, right? That's the 9, including Kenny Pickett there. So, and I think you even chimed in, and you didn't play. You played by the rules, but you colored outside the lines.
Yeah, for the exercises. I don't have to pick the Colbert guys in my own exercise, right?
I know. I just said you colored out light, but why don't you explain first your selections in this, and then do the first round pick going by the Colbert set of rules.
Sure. Well, yeah, my selections here in my redraft exercise, and I was not deep in thought here. I kind of just went through it in a couple minutes, just looking at some names here. But Jalen Petrie, the nickel safety from Baylor, in round 1, George Pickens in round 2, Malik Willis round 3, Calvin Austin round 4, Coke Keeft in round 6, and then around 7, the 2 picks, Balin Spector and Rashid Walker. So I swap out Pickett for Willis in the 3rd. I keep the receivers, go Petrie in the 1st round. Now it's my own personal Steelers redraft.
All right. Tell me a little bit about Coke Keeft. I never watched.
Just a really low ceiling, high floor blocker. He caught, I think, 12 passes in his Minnesota career, but he's just one of the probably top 2 blocking inline tight ends in this entire class. And so not as big as Matt Spaeth, but certainly would get some of those Matt Spaeth comparisons in terms of being a Minnesota boy and being that kind of block first, block second kind of guy. So 6th-round pick that wouldn't have a lot of offensive value, but in terms of your run game, that extra tight end, if Zach Gentry ever went down, that's what I would take Koki for.
All right, and you are obviously right out of the chute with Jalen Petrie early on in this process, the safety out of Baylor.
Yeah, that's one of my guys. Now I know that 20 is going to sound, a touch strong there, but it's a relatively meaningless exercise. Has no impact on obviously what actually happens. So just a guy that I thought could have been strong safety, nickel, blitzer, aggressive, cover guy, smart guy, a little undersized, maybe be that strong safety type, but I think he has the mentality and the play style to play there. So I think he would have been a really good piece in that Steelers defense.
Would Steelers fans be crying reach again if had Petrie been the pick?
Yeah, they would have, because he was kind of viewed as an early day 2 guy. It would have been Edmonds 2.0 in the sense of day 2 guy that goes in round 1. But I think Petrie has more ball skills and is not even the better athlete, but just kind of plays more fluidly than Terrell Edmonds has done so far.
All right, now applying the Kevin Colbert rules to these 9 players here, who's the guy?
That's probably more of a difficult question for me to answer. I would probably consider Lewis Seen, maybe Dax Hill, one of those 2 guys over Pickett.
Okay. It looks like several people in the comments would have rather than the Steelers go. They didn't learn their lesson last year. They want Tyler Linderbaum, right?
Yeah,
they got some Trent McDuffie in there. I think it's pretty varied. There's quite a few McDuffies in here, I think.
Did you do a redraft last year? I pulled up my 2021 redraft exercise just to see how things look a year out. Did you do one?
I don't think I put it in the comments or anything.
Here's mine from last year. Najee Harris. I kept Najee in the first. Creed Humphrey in the second. Then Ronnie Perkins, Robert Rochelle, Luke Farrell, Tommy Doyle, James Wiggins, Will Fries, and then Presley Harvin the third. So everything kind of third round back is a little shaky, but I would have walked away with Harris and Humphrey as my top two picks.
Okay. And it looks like in the comments here we have Tyler Linderbaum. We're talking about first picks: Booth, Lewis Cine, another Andrew Booth, a McDuffie, another Andrew Booth, another McDuffie, Lewis Cine, Linderbaum. Some people sticking with Pickett, McDuffie, Pickett, Linderbaum, Pickett, Daxton Hill, vote for Daxton Hill, another McDuffie. Yeah, so it's a little bit varied there. And then you and Jalen Petrie, I think you might have been the only one with Petrie in there.
Yeah, I think so. But it's always fun to just see how things look and kind of put that perspective on the draft. So I always look forward to whenever you post that exercise.
And I think it just, I think it leads a lot of credence, though, especially after the fact, seeing where the quarterbacks and all that, you can really understand why the Steelers went the way that they did with the quarterback situation. Because quite honestly, it was going to be probably one of 8 guys realistically, and probably even 7 because of the medical. You have to wonder. Well, no, even less than that. Ojabo is in that group, and Mechie. Both those guys were coming off of injuries, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Mechie with the ACL, Ojabo with the Achilles.
All right. So those are two that you could probably loosely throw out the window there. Devontae Wyatt with the character concerns, you could probably loosely throw him out the window there. So I think you're left with 6 names at that point: Kenny Pickett, Quay Walker, going on down, Daxton Hill, Lewis Cine, going on down, Andrew Booth Jr. Why did Andrew Booth Jr. drop?
He has medical too. He had some serious medical stuff going on with him.
All right, so that's another one there. So and Fedarian Mathis. I mean, you could probably make a claim that you could see him being the pick there. But I think when you start whittling this thing down, and obviously you applying the Kevin Colbert rules to it there, you can understand why Pickett was their guy at that point.
Sure, if he was their top quarterback and carried a first-round grade, then that makes all the sense in the world. So I understand wholeheartedly why they made the pick. It just wasn't my pick there. I'm trying to look back now. You got me thinking about other past years, about other past exercises. I don't know
down the wormhole.
I'm not doing any work the rest of the day, so this is the extent of my work for you. My 2020 redraft class was terrible, so Pittsburgh bested me on this one in a pretty big way. Let me pull it back up here. Right. My redraft, now they had no first round pick that year. Obviously, that was for Minka, but Denzel Mims, Terrell Burgess, Rashard Lawrence, Kevin Dotson, Evan Weaver, and Casey Toohill. Probably people just recognize Dotson's name because he's a Steeler. So that was an ugly-looking redraft on my part.
All right. Okay. So any as you mentioned, any new thoughts on any of the draft picks here?
Not.
Have you dove deeper into some of the film? I watched more of the Calvin Austin last night and all, and I tell you what, there is. I like the release. I looked at various different clips of his to kind of isolate in on the release. I like how he does kind of vary that release. I think they're going to have to kind of. There is some wasted movement, I think, at times with that footwork in there. I saw one reference of he has quick because of against press and kind of man situations there. How he has kind of the reflexes of a boxer because he does a good job at avoiding kind of these stabs at him and all like that. And I found that to actually be true. Now, sometimes I don't like the kind of the way he releases when he'll duck, really lower his shoulder to kind of duck under, a release. And I think they'll probably have to work that kind of out of him there. But obviously with him being an undersized guy, he can't afford to have hands put on him at the line of scrimmage because now he does have kind of a little thicker base to him, though that kind of plays into his favor. He is For his size, he is, I think, one of the stronger, undersized guys along the lines would kind of like the Sky Moore situation out of Western Michigan there. But once again, he is a guy that you're going to want to try to get free releases off the line there. I think a lot of his slot snaps, actually truer slot snaps, came like back in 19 there. He obviously has played all around other than that. But the other thing that I kind of wanted to look at when digging deeper into his tape is, obviously the Steelers like their wide receivers to be able to block and all like that. He's got a little of the want to him, but he does make some business decisions in there, and the effort's not always where you would like it to be with him blocking. But because of his size anyway, whenever he does get in situations that he does engage, it doesn't take too much for him to get, cast to the side, if you will,
Sure.
there. But obviously they did not draft Calvin Austin III to run block.
Right.
More than anything there. Would like to see a little bit more of that, maybe speed show up on tape, I think. And look, I haven't gone, completely through all of it there. I mean, you obviously see it in some aspects there, vertically. I'm going to be looking for more instances of that. Another thing that stuck out to me that I tried to go back through with these, especially wide receivers, is how does he catch the football? And, he's got what, 9.25 or 9.5 hands. I think, which isn't bad for a kid his size, to be honest with you. You look at a wide receiver under 5'10", sometimes you'll see those kids with 8 3/4.
Yeah,
maybe
he's got bigger hands than George Pickens. Pickens is 8 3/4.
Right. You normally see those with smaller hands. So looking back to see how he catches the football, and there are some body catches with a guy like him. But over the middle of the field, found a couple of nice clips of him actually catching with his hands and tucking quickly. So that's good to see in that aspect. So those are just a few extra things that I picked out on his tape after going through more of it last night.
I know our Andrew Shaver pulled up some of the data on his route tree, Calvin Austin's route tree, and you saw the drops coming more across the middle of the field, which is probably typical for a lot of receivers, but it felt, skewed pretty heavily towards middle of the field crossing patterns for him. So, have to work on just being able to take the shot. And as Frisman Jackson said, he's a tough guy. He's willing to go across the middle, but just needs to be a little more consistent, I think, in that area of the field.
I am showing here, looks like 7 drops in 2020 and 5 in 2021 and 3 prior to those in 2018 and 2019 total. So what's that? 15 drops in total. On the flip side, average depth of target, obviously very strong with him. 17.4 is what I'm seeing average depth of target in 2019. 2020, that dipped down. They started using them a lot more. I think he only had 26 targets, 17 receptions in 2019. They really started using them in 2020, and then obviously in 2021. Average depth of target 12.7 yards in 2020, and 2021 average target of 11.3. Those are nice numbers. Those are very, very nice numbers when it comes to a guy of his size, how he was used to see depth of target numbers over 11 yards, average depth of target.
Yeah, I'm looking at Andrew's chart here. He has total average depth of target 12.8. He has 16 career drops, 5 on wide screens, 2 on slants, 3 on crossing patterns, 1 on an in route. And so the majority of them are coming from either the screen game, where I presume he's trying to get his eyes upfield a little bit quickly to see what's there and get yards after the catch, and then also coming on those in breaking or middle of the field type routes.
So if you're listening to this podcast, be prepared to see some drops from him. To some degree. You obviously hope to minimize them, but he's probably going to drop a few footballs.
Yeah, I don't think he was known as the best catcher in this class. I don't know if drops are a huge problem with him, but again, I don't think his hands are. I think Pickens has better hands overall, despite having smaller hands.
It looks like in some stuff from Sports Info Solutions, 78% of his route running was out of the slot in 2019. 2020, it was 22%. In 2021, it dipped down to 12%. It did look like they used him more on the outside last season. So probably if you run and look at a couple of games in 2020 and 19 specifically, even though he wasn't used much in the passing game in 19, you'll probably get a larger snapshot of him running routes out of the slot there. Here's an interesting stat as well, too. Unique routes run, 7 in 2019, and then 15 each in 2020 and 2021. So he seemed to be now, and I haven't, that's one thing. What is the charting from Andrew's show on the different routes run? Is there a nice kind of percentage variance in there?
Oh, so whenever you say unique routes run, you mean like how many different types of routes did he run in the route tree? Is that what that means?
Right.
Okay. I'm just eyeballing it. It looks like it's about maybe 15 plus. Obviously, some much more than others. I mean, you're getting somewhere the numbers in terms of, and these are just based off of targets, not necessarily total routes run, but some of them are like he only had 4 targets on in routes, apparently, I guess, in his career. I'm not entirely sure what the structure of this is, but I believe it's career. And so the majority of them came on hitches and goes and screens and slants and crossing and out routes, or the kind of the top routes where he was targeted.
All right. And we kind of project them to start maybe utilize or working him more towards the slot role, right?
Right. Again, he was more of an outside guy, at least the last couple of years. Sounds like he played more slot earlier, as the numbers you're referencing seem to indicate. But just based on the body type and how he's going to win and the kind of quick twitchiness, again, can he play on the outside? Yes. But when you have Johnson and Claypool and Pickens in the mold, in the fold, I should say, you're going to put Austin in the slot.
All right. Have you looked at anything else on him overall, or
not in the last tape? 24 hours? But again, I think his ability to win, to beat man coverage, to win one-on-one with his quickness it's less about even the speed as it is the quickness and the change of direction type stuff, making some of those small movements, those nuanced movements in his routes. But I think, as you said, getting off the line, working his hands better is going to be important for him. Now, he can probably duck some guys because he is so short. I think he ducked Sauce once because Sauce is such a tall, long guy, but he'll have to kind of work on his release and probably bettering his hand use to beat, rolled up press coverage.
Going over some more of those metrics when it comes to George Pickens overall. Let's see here. Average depth of target really across the board in all 3 seasons, and albeit he only played limited in 2021, it looks like that's right around 14 yards on average depth of target for him, which is obviously strong. The fact that he's got just 2 drops listed is another very strong aspect of what he brings. And unique routes run, throw out 2021 because you only played didn't play much. You only had 2 unique routes run in 2021.
What were the 2 routes? Does it say, or does it not?
No, it doesn't say.
Go.
One of them's got to be a go, right, against Alabama, right?
Right.
It doesn't say here what the.
It's probably like go and hitch. It was just slight adjustments, beat him or run it off. Yeah.
Now, unique routes in 2019, 2020, 11 and 10. So that's one of the things I think that'll kind of stick out as you want to see him become more. Now he'll run the snot out of that hitch and curl, right? And didn't we mention that the other day about his suddenness and his ability to sit down real quick and run defenders off of him in that aspect there. So. He's obviously got that down, runs, run quite a bit of goes and sluggos and those kind of things there. So probably you just want him, the rawness of him as a route runner. And look, he's only 21 and obviously did not get the chance last season to really work on that. So, I guess this will be his senior year with the Steelers, right?
Basically, right. And I imagine the route tree was a little bit more limited because the overall passing game structure, Georgia versus Memphis, is probably a bit different. Memphis is a bit more spread, a bit more wide open. Georgia's more pro style. So not too terribly concerned about those numbers.
All right. And once again, there's I went back and watched some more of that Calvin Austin versus Sauce Gardner, and there's even that quote floating around, I think, this morning from Chris Sims with Sauce Gardner basically saying that was one of the toughest guys he had to face, and it's a good thing he answered that the way he did, because the tape don't lie. The one guy looked like it did give Sauce Gardner some fits was indeed Calvin Austin III there, because of that shiftiness and
right.
and suddenness and change of direction. Sauce made sure a couple times to grab him to prevent him from running past him.
And that makes sense because Gardner isn't the short area movement type of guy. He's long. He wants to get hands on you. He wants to be able to carry you vertically, and that's a little bit tougher to do against Austin. So I'm not surprised by the performance nor the comments from Sauce.
Okay.
Overall
excited to see both those kids on the field. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
I don't know how many more times I'll say that throughout the offseason, probably a ton, but it brings an element that this team has speed and ability to stretch the football field, I think. And this team needs more explosive plays, as we've said 50 times now in the last 4 months.
They do. Like I said, my favorite part of the draft were the two receivers they took. To do what you asked readers to do in the last podcast on Sunday is to sum up the Steelers draft with a grade and a sentence. My sentence would be: love the receivers, everything else kind of meh, B-. That's my 30,000 foot answer.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in that B range as well too. And as we did state, this thing's going to this draft class is really going to revolve a lot around Kenny Pickett for obvious reasons.
Sure.
There, even though the Ola Duncan pick, you predicted and all like that, makes you kind of wonder what the plans are here, because unless somebody gets hurt or you trade somebody away, it makes you kind of wonder if that kid's not destined for the practice squad. And then that point, then aren't you really back to square one? And if he's in demand, he'll get plucked from your practice squad and end up as a number 3 or number 2 on somebody else's roster there. So I had to look at the list. I'd much rather have had, and I wouldn't have thought that a guy like Gunter would have still been on the board there, but I'm going to forever kind of wonder about that pick. Wasn't he 7th round after Ola Duncan? So yes. That's at least one I think I might question going forward there. It's hard to look at the Connor Hayward pick and go, because it felt like such a given, that it's hard to say, well, why didn't they go another way when almost that one was penciled in stone the entire time? You see what I'm saying there?
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
doesn't mean that you can't second guess it, obviously, but it just felt like that was going to be the pick, and you almost turn your head the other way because once again, it should be looked at as him as a football player first and foremost. You can really justify it if he does make your 53, so, but that's not guaranteed. He's going to have to earn every bit of it as a 6th round selection there. So been interesting to see had this team had a 5th round draft pick, what they would have done with it.
Mm-hmm. And listen, I think it's Ola Duncan. I'm gonna try to get my head to say Ola Duncan. I also could be a little bit wrong about that, but I'm gonna try to put that in my head. So if Ola Duncan,
if I can master Chikwama Okorafor. I can think I can wrap my brain about that. Yeah.
If he makes the practice squad year one, which I think is a good chance of that happening, I mean, that's pretty typical of a 7th round pick. So that in itself is fine. But what is the best case scenario for him? Is he ever going to contribute to this team in any sort of meaningful way? No. And unless you do most 7th round picks do that, no. But most of them at least have a chance to help you on special teams, to compete, maybe to play a little bit. This guy, I don't know what best case scenario is. And so 7th round quarterbacks, I understand why they took him, but I'm not a fan of taking quarterbacks basically past round 2.
Mark Robinson, a year after taking Buddy Johnson, maybe the pick wouldn't appear to, to be so meh had you not drafted. What does this say about Buddy Johnson now? I look at it several different ways there. And this isn't obviously a guy that you have a lot of tape on at the inside linebacker where you can go, well, he's this, that. I mean, just in a little bit I've seen it. We commented on this, or I did the other day. You get some of the Vincent Williams feel in there, but he didn't. I mean, there's such a small selection of games and really such a small impact of kind of key plays within that. Now I haven't gone deep into the Ole Miss film yet, but we knew about him prior to the draft because of the Steelers showing some interest in there. So we at least had a little bit of insight on him, ahead of this thing there. But once again, when there was a stat this morning from Dane Brugler about all the undrafted players, or not undrafted, about the non-combine players that were drafted over the weekend here. Steelers had 2 of them, right? And Oladokin, is that how you want me to say it? Oladokin and Mark Robinson there. So look, the Steelers have shown in the past that they're not, they're not necessarily married to having a guy at the combine. I mean, you go back a couple of years ago with Kevin Dotson, but there were a lot of people at that time wondering why the hell Kevin Dotson wasn't invited to the combine. I don't think you're gonna find that same set of people saying, why the heck wasn't Mark Robinson and Chris Oladokin not invited to the combine?
Sure, and those guys were each brought in for pre-draft visits where there might have been some sort of medical component, testing, physical happening there. And so that's what the combine is for. It's to get to know you in person and for the medical. And so when you bring those guys in for a visit, you can probably better accomplish those 2 things.
Now, if Connor Hayward was 6'3", a 6 foot and listing him as a tight end, he's not, we had that conversation the other day. He's going to be in more than just the tight end room meetings if he makes the squad.
Yeah, he'll be playing more in other positions than he will as an inline tight end. I think his inline tight end work will be minimal.
You know what? They're going to ask him to drop 5 pounds or so, and they're going to give him a couple carries with the football too.
Yeah, they might. I think he's got that background. I mean, that's what he was until this past year. He was a running back, and then Walker transfers, like I said, and they move Hayward to get him on the field and get his role somewhere else on the team. So I think he'll carry the ball a little bit. Right now, the competition behind Harris is not much.
And here's the thing too: you worry about. We had this conversation years ago with Dree Archer specifically. Instances. When it almost when Dree Archer came on the field, he had a red big flashing red light on his helmet there because they're going to try to get into football here. It was easy to kind of key on him in certain instances here. With Connor Hayward, are you going to be able to get him on the football field enough and use him not with the football in his hands, as opposed to, well, in comes Connor Hayward, I'd look for the ball to go him and some. You see what I'm saying? So is he going to be enough of a weapon where you can mix him in offensively, other than putting the football in his hands and giving him a touch?
Yeah, I don't have that same concern, assuming Hayward can develop a bit more as a blocker. And even if you're using him as part of a concept in a play action, a curl flat or type of thing, I mean, the ball doesn't have to go to him to be on the field some. So I don't think it's the same scenario. Archer's skill set was so limited, and he only kind of did one thing well. And if he wasn't going to have the ball in his hands, then what was he going to do on a play? It never really fit. I think Hayward can wear a lot of different hats, and again, he's more of a football player. Dre Archer was a really fast guy. He was not a football player, and Hayward is a legitimately talented football player. So I don't think that there's much of a correlation there.
All right. I forgot to look at how many explosive plays Connor Hayward had. He had 4 in I'm gonna have to go find these runs. 2018, he had 4 runs of 20 plus yards. That was the only year, it looks like, that he had any runs longer than 20 yards. And we're not just talking about a kid that got the ball just 4 or 5 times a season, Now receiving stats here real quick here. He had 3 catches last year of 25 plus yards gained. Looking back some of these other years, he had 2 in 2018. And so he had 5 receptions of 25 plus yards.
Okay. I know in 18, the biggest run he had was I think 80-yarder against Maryland later in that game.
Okay.
So I have that one on my timeline. I had that one in my my player profile. So I mean, I thought he had some speed for his frame.
Not that obviously with a guy his size and that explosive runs or all that, but it's hard not to measure that. I think that really needs to be looked at. How especially the 10-yard gains. Go back and look at some of those where he was on that, because you'd like to have him not have to get all the, one of the things that stuck out about this Oklahoma State running back, Jaylen Warren, is, man, he had to get a lot of yards after first contact, and that's not bad that you got that trait to you, but in the NFL, those yards after contact are probably going to decrease to some degree,
Sure. Yeah, my comp for Hayward, and people got mad at me for this. I think it's the best comp I've had of any of the Steelers picks is Jason Snelling. I mean, tell me what I'm wrong about with that. I mean, from a height, weight, speed, usage, career arc standpoint, I can't find a better comp to Connor Hayward than Jason Snelling.
Okay. I'll have to go back and look at some Snelling tape. 13 runs of 10 plus yards for Connor Hayward during his career.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was one of their top running backs. Carried the ball 118 times back in 2018. So again, what he can do, the versatility, he'll never be the guy that does just one thing great or does one thing only, but he will wear a lot of hats. He'll create a lot of value at the bottom of the roster. Again, I think upside is pretty capped with him, and this guy's only going to catch 12, 15 passes a year probably, because how often is he going to see the field, and then how many times will he actually be given the ball whenever he sees the field? 10% of the time or whatever the number is. I mean, it'll be pretty limited, but I think special teams is where he'll make most of his hay.
Without a doubt, the Steelers 2022 draft, obviously is anchored by Kenny Pickett, but their top 4 picks, specifically their 2 wide receivers in George Pickens and Calvin Austin III, those absolutely have, because of the back end of this draft class. And as we said, if you could get a guy in the back end of these final, 4 picks or 3 picks in the final from 6th round and into the 7th round, you're not expecting Oladokin to play any. So there's that. Hopefully he can become your backup for the next 2 or 3 years at some point in there. Something's probably gone wrong if Mark Robinson has to become a starter on your unit. And we just had a long talk about Connor Hayward and, what maybe you can get out of him. So, and one guy we're not obviously talking about a lot yet is DeMarvin Leal. Hopefully you have a guy like that can hit his upside, because 2 years from now, is Cameron Hayward going to be on the roster?
I think he certainly could be. I mean, we'll see what Father Time does, but to me, he's shown no signs of slowing down. But you're right, there is a limit. I mean, how many guys, 36, 35 years old plus, are playing in the NFL along the D-line? There are not many of them.
All right. So if they can hit with these 3 offensive players, that sure would be the calling card without a doubt. And specifically, obviously, with the quarterback being one of those things there. I mean, if they miss on Pickett bad after, if we're sitting here at the same time in let's see, how many years would that be? Let's see, 2024. And we're thinking, oh man, what do you think is going to happen? You know, if we're questioning whether or not Pickett can be that guy, you know, then you're going to look back at this class, regardless of how Pickens and Austin turn out, I think, and saying, well, that wasn't great.
Sure. And again, just to your point about Hayward, I think he could do the Calais Campbell thing where the just dude never ages and the dude just keeps playing forever and ever. But as you said, Kenny Pickett will define this class. I think about 2004, everyone thinks what a great class that was. You get Ben, you get your Hall of Fame guy. Here's the draft class. Ben, Ricardo Coakley, Max Starks, Nathaniel Adebe, Bo Lacey, Matt Kranchik, Drew Kaler, Eric Taylor. Starks was a hit. Ben was a hit, but the rest of it sucked. And so remember, it was a great class just because Ben obviously turned into Big Ben.
You got some nice starts out of Max Starks in there.
Yeah, no, Starks was a hit, like for sure. That was a good pick for third round.
You know,
but I mean, Coakley, terrible bust. And then the other guys were later round picks, but did nothing. DB never played a game. Lacey never played a game. I didn't know who the heck Drew Kaler was until I looked it up last night. Matt Kranchik was a reserve tight end. Eric Taylor, I think, played in one game. And so, I mean, you got nothing from that class aside from Starks and then, of course, Ben at the top.
And you get a Hall of Fame quarterback out of that. Everybody forgets the rest of it.
Ricardo Coakley hurts a lot less when Ben's your top guy.
All right. Yeah, look, and here's hoping we are able to look back at that. I'll tell you what, I hope it's another 18 years before I won't be alive, but I hope it for at least for you guys' sakes, you're not having to go that deep into a quarterback class for another 18 years because that sucked, man.
I'm looking forward to 2040 when we look at cyborg quarterback NIL transfer 3,000 bought as the Steelers first round.
Man,
pick.
What is your thoughts on that topic? It's going to get worse too, I think, with the whole Pitt. Are they definitely going to lose him or what with Addison?
I think USC's offering, what did they say, $3 million with a house and who knows what else. And so I think someone heard the Tomlin booster with a big enough blank check comment and said, we're going to try it with a Pitt guy. So I think they're going to lose him because I don't think Pitt can compete with the giant offer that USC is making them.
What is your thoughts on this whole because this is a Pandora's box type thing now, right? With this whole NIL thing and all like that. I'm not opposed to these kids earning money. All right. Because obviously the schools profit from having these high profile athletes and the kids make nothing. And what percentage of these kids go to the NFL? And then even from the percentage of the kids that go to NFL, how many of those kids are back out on the street again 2 years later, it's a huge machine that not much comes out. If you look over percentage wise, not much comes out of the other side of it. It might feel like that way, but why do you have a draft every year where you're drafting 200 and something kids, like that there? Once again, I'm not opposed to these kids making money in college, but what's now going to prevent just college becoming free agency?
Right. I mean, you see the transfer portal. I mean, I was going through the bios of some of these draft picks in this year's class. How many of them were transfer guys was interesting. That's going to continue and probably accelerate exponentially going forward. So it is a brave new world. Short answer, I'm good with it. The NIL stuff. I mean, a lot of this stuff was happening before, just more hush hush with boosters and things like that. It just wasn't in the open because it was illegal technically, but every team did this kind of stuff and paid guys and things like that. So at least now it's all in the open. But I'm in favor of these guys getting paid. I think they certainly deserve it. If they can make that kind of money, then more power to them. We think about Justin Ross, for example. If you could have gotten paid in 2018, 2019, the guy that's not getting paid now because of the injuries that he's had. So I'm generally speaking all for it. The concern that I would have is just, you got an 18-year-old, 19-year-old getting millions of dollars, and how's that going to handle that money? Will he use it responsibly and well and not ruin his life? Because it certainly could and make some really bad decisions. So hopefully there are people able to guide and help these guys who are getting unimaginable wealth when you're 18, 19 in college. I mean, that's kind of a scary thing. So again, I'm all for these guys getting paid. It's just a matter of, do they have some guidance along the way? And I'm sure some of these guys don't.
Yeah. And that's a good point you bring up, but I'm not even so concerned about that avenue as I am is this going to be just a case of the rich getting richer on the college football front? The Alabama boosters, the USC boosters, these Michigan boosters, these big college programs that have already highly funded by the alumni and I get the point that, well, Dave, this stuff's been going on for years with the players, with the cars and all like that. Well, yeah, because they got the money to do it with a lot of these larger schools too. That's why these top prospects end up at these top colleges, right?
Right. So it's really no different. I mean, it's a little bit different because it's more open and more brazen, but
with it being more open, are you going to see it being even more rampant?
Maybe, but again, it's the same structure. The big schools are winning before. The big schools are going to continue to win, and the little guys have to try to compete. I mean, it's the same overall landscape as it was prior to the NIL stuff being authorized.
I mean, 20 years from now, are we going to have basically areas of the country being quote unquote minor league football teams for NFL teams, and thus funding coming from NFL teams into colleges that way, and then having some sort of proprietary rights because of that? You see what I'm saying? Will college football end up being the NFL's minor league system?
I mean, I don't think it'll ever literally be that. I guess you're not saying that either. You're just kind of implying that it would be in a sense. Bottom line is, though, these guys deserve to get paid. If they can get paid and make money with the way that all the money schools are making and stuff like that, and if people want to do that and give these guys advertising, marketing stuff, then I'm good with it.
Should there be some sort of stipulation that these kids graduate
to get the money, or in order, or what
something?
Do you mean?
Yeah, I mean,
no, because then what if a guy wants to declare early? Right. He can go get paid in the NFL. So I think. No, I wouldn't put a stipulation on that in that sense.
Anyway, I've never been opposed to these kids getting money in college because they are, quote, however you want to view it, they are exploited. And colleges make a lot of money off their sports programs, do they not?
They do.
So and prior to the last couple of years, the kid's getting cars, and a kid's mom ends up with a nice house or something. That obviously has happened and it's been talked about for the last 30 years. But and I'm not against what's happening here. It's just I wonder if you're going to because Pitt fans have got to be crushed, man.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure that Addison losing him would be a huge blow, especially you lose Pickett and you lose Addison and you lose Mark Whipple. That's devastating.
I mean, what are you going to do to the fan base? I mean, you just got it now where it feels like Pitt almost has a half a chance to be able to compete in a college football season. And now out the back door, it kind of goes with this,
Sure, there were unintended.
When I grew up, Pitt used to be a team to watch, a team to root for. You thought they had a chance every year. There was one attraction growing up as I like anything Pittsburgh at that point as a child, because obviously all stimulated from Pirates and the Steelers growing up, and at that point, by osmosis, you became a University of Pittsburgh fan. You hated Penn State. That even in Northwest Florida, back in when I grew up in the 80s, it was the thing. Marino, Tony Dorsett, Hugh Green. You had things to kind of root for back then. Now, I mean, you just finally get back to the point where you're able to root for Pitt again, and one of your star players goes out the back door because of more money at USC.
Right, but I'm sure Pitt will siphon off some other recruit from some other school, and they'll try to replace him that way. All I want is my dang NCAA video game. That's all I want. I don't know. We can have these NIL deals, guys getting paid $1 million, but I can't play NCAA 22. That's all I care about.
Yeah, I didn't mean to go down the rabbit hole there, but I mean,
we're gonna get some hate mail for this one, I'm sure.
Going down, talking about college football and Pitt players in here right after the draft and all. But I mean, that's obviously a topical thing right now, especially in Pittsburgh overall. So I thought where were we before going that
I think it's probably just a good time to switch gears, talk about some money, some undrafted free agent contracts. No one getting paid the millions that Jordan Addison is, but some of the UDFA numbers on guys like Jalen Warren and others you want to pass along, Dave.
Yeah, nothing major as far as the signing bonuses go. I think we got it. The Rucker kid got 15,000, I think.
Who got 15,000?
The tackle out of North Carolina, I think.
Oh, Tucker. Okay, yeah.
Tucker. What do I call him? Rucker.
I think so. Rucker. Yeah.
He got 15,000. I think Owens, the offensive lineman out of Alabama, got 5,000. And who was the other one there? The edge rusher out of Auburn got 7,500.
TD Moultrie. Yeah.
Right.
So very typical.
Have you watched any of him? I was busy with the running backs looking at them. I have not looked at the edge rusher yet. Shame on me.
No. Jonathan is doing the report on Moultrie that should be up in the next day or two. I went down my own rabbit hole, and I'll talk about this more at a different time. Ranking some Kevin Colbert stuff at the end of his Steelers GM. I'm ranking every single draft pick Kevin Colbert made, all 177 of them, excluding this year's class, of course, and ranking them from the best to worst, or really worst to best. So you want to take a guess at who 177 is? This is not a finalized list, but this guy's probably going to be the in the worst spot.
170. In other words, the worst draft
pick in Kevin Colbert history. I'll spoil the list because I'll start with the worst.
I mean, I wouldn't think that you put a guy like Golston in there, would you?
It is Senquez Golston.
Okay.
Second round pick who appeared in 7 practices and never played in a game. And listen, I'm not blaming him, I'm not blaming the team necessarily, which is terrible injury luck, but who could be worse than a guy that literally never played in a game, even in a preseason one?
Right. I'm sure they've had a couple of those along the line.
Not a second round pick. Not in the Colbert era.
Right. I'm not that early, but I'm talking kind of later round guys. But I see what you're doing because you're putting value on them as well too.
Right. There's a weight to the round. Right. Of it. Yeah. The 7th round pick who didn't play is a lot less of a miss than the 2nd round pick who didn't play.
Right. Interesting. God bless you for taking on that. And our own David O. And he. Man, I can't imagine David O keeping those guys ranked and moving them up and down all-time Steeler list and all.
Yeah, his top 500 is really impressive and a sight to behold.
I'm anal.
So you guys will see that list probably maybe starting next week or something. Kind of, it won't all be in one. I'll break it up into a series of like 10 at a time or something like that. But definitely some interesting names on there. So
that's the rabbit hole that you went down?
I was doing that at like 1 a.m. last night. I was like, who needs sleep? Let me rank where Danny Farmer is supposed to be on the Steelers list of the worst Colbert picks. Let's see here, Dave. Devin Bush, the option due date is today by 4 p.m. Whether or not Pittsburgh will pick up the 5th-year option, neither of us, and probably no Steeler fan, anticipates a team picking up the option, but today is the deadline.
Man, have they ever waited this late in this era of CBA, starting which I think began 2011? When the role of the 5th-year options and all like that came into existence, have they ever waited this late to announce that they were picking one up?
Not to my knowledge. No.
No. So unless Devin Bush had bionics or something put in him, and they were waiting for the outcome of that, you never watched The $6 Million Man, did you?
No, I get the idea. We can rebuild him better, stronger, whatever the thing is, but faster. Yeah.
Right. That was quite. And then the bionic woman, Lindsay Wagner. Boy, I had a crush on her when I was your age, probably younger. Lord have mercy. She was the bionic woman, and they had instances of like Sasquatch show up and Bigfoot show up in some of those. That's when it started to jump the shark a little bit in that aspect there. But unless Devin Bush has had some bionics put in him, he's not having his 5th-year option picked up by the Steelers this afternoon.
Do you know where the term "jump the shark" comes from?
Yes, actually, I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was trying to impress you with some piece of cultural information.
You know who John Hine is?
No.
John Hine, I think, is kind of the one that John Hine from the Howard Stern show. He's a pop culture freak, and I think he had I think kind of his stardom of kind of writing a book or something about, tracking pop culture. And in fact, I think maybe he had a book like Jump the Shark Moments in TV or something along those lines. Anyway, that kind of stardom from that, I think, is what actually kind of landed him on the on the Howard Stern show. And really the Jump the Shark phrase comes from Happy Days, the sitcom back in the 70s, obviously, with Henry Winkler playing the Fonz, and Ron Howard playing Opie, and you had the family and all like that. Well, as that series kind of progressed, for the need of storylines, once they got past Pinky Tuscadero and who, by the way, that was Susie Quattro, the music star. A lot of people don't realize the connection of Susie Quattro and all like that. Boy, you messed up here, boy.
I didn't realize what I was doing here.
This rabbit hole. But for need for a storyline there, they had Fonzie making a bet or a dare, I forget specifically, and they had this kind of this pin in this body of water, I guess the bay or whatnot, and they had a shark in there, and Fonzie had to jump the shark on a set of skis, water skis pulled behind a boat. And when he did that, people thought, oh Lord, these storylines are getting out of hand. And then that's affectionately referred to as a jump the shark moment of when that when that show went down the drain. And now you look at different other things of series and stuff like that, and you think, oh man, this storyline, this is a really jump the shark kind of moment here. So that's where all that comes from.
Well, that was a more extensive answer than I even knew. So I learned something today, even in asking the question. So as you can tell, this show is a little off the rails.
Oh,
today,
I don't know
okay.
how we really went off. But you knew that it stemmed from.
Yeah, I was going to say, right? It was from Happy Days when the Fonz literally jumped the shark, and that's where that moment came from. I didn't realize you said John Hine was his name?
John Hine, yeah, he's a contributor on on the Howard Stern show now, and along with Baba Booey. But our Stern freaks will get a kick out of all that. They're probably our crowd's very divided. There's the stuff that likes me to talk about this stuff, and then there's the younger kids like you that don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
Your inbox is going to be really interesting for our next show on Wednesday. So stay tuned for those.
Yeah, and usually when I only get the emails, is people applauding me for hitting on some of this stuff. I don't. Okay. My hate mail doesn't usually come from pop culture references or anything along those lines. My hate mail's usually related to other things. So
right. All right. We'll try to
reel it back in. You get any hate mail or hate tweets or anything like that, or no?
I've gotten some more lately.
I don't get any, man. I wish Alex would die or anything like that kind of stuff. What kind of hate mail do you get?
I'm glad you don't. For myself, I'm glad that people don't. I mean, it's terrible that some of the things that people say to you. Yeah, I mean, it's the tragedy of the internet. I get some mean comments, but probably none of the guff that you get.
Give me some of the stuff that you get. Is it mostly on Twitter or is it email?
Yeah, no, I don't ever get. I mean, I don't have the open email, the policy that you do for the show. So that's probably one thing. I'm sure there's probably some stuff in like Facebook messages that some angry comments people have sent me. I forget. I've gotten some just, you're stupid. Just the typical internet type stuff. There was that one guy I quote tweeted him something about that. In a foot contest, I would come in second. I didn't even understand what that was. I didn't feel like a very sick burn to me. Find your foot contest. I don't know. There was some reference there that's over my head.
Yeah, we get a lot of the also to the you guys never played football before. Yeah. Actually, I have. Alex hasn't, but I have high school level. I mean, look, I proudly claim to the fact that I was run over by Emmitt Smith in high school. So not a lot of people could tackle him in high school, and I was one of them. So take that. But look, what that burn's been out of date for what, just because you haven't played football doesn't mean you can't understand the game of football and break it down and everything that goes along with it.
Yeah, pretty silly there. So let's go back to the Steelers talk here. One thing I do want to apologize for on Sunday's show, I called UMass DB Bryce Watts a camp invite. He is not. He was signed to a contract, so I apologize for that. So I want to clarify Bryce Watts was signed as an undrafted free agent. He'll, of course, be at rookie minicamp, but not on a tryout basis. And he had a good game against Pitt. And I'm guessing they were watching Pickett and saw this guy make some plays and said, let's go sign this guy after the draft.
I guess the limit of 3 or 5 invites, whatever. I guess that was COVID related only, right?
Right. Yeah, it was. And so once the COVID restrictions came off earlier in the offseason, you can now basically they'll bring in 15 to 20 tryout guys. And so they'll have like an actual full rookie minicamp roster, not the skeleton kind of thing.
Should there be a limit? You wrote an article, I think, last year or the year before, something about how something to do with undrafted free agents and something another and loosening the terms up on some. Do you remember what that article was about?
I don't quite. I remember I was upset about their cut downs. They were doing the 90 to 80 to 75, whatever they were doing. I prefer they had it right for a couple of years when they just went from 90 to 53. I hate cutting these guys in the preseason.
Right.
I hate they were cutting preseason in general. It really just narrows the path for these guys to make it. So I'm in favor of anything that gives the little guy a shot. So I'm happy that they're going to have a lot more tryout candidates in rookie minicamp.
So you're okay. Should there be a max amount? No, I think I remember what it was. It was about the limitations of the younger players appearing in the rookie minicamp. That's what it was about with you.
Okay. Where it's like only rookies and first year players and
right.
This weird. I forget exactly what I wrote, but the more.
Yeah, that a guy could bid in the league.
Levon Hooks was in like 6 rookie mini camps, even though he wasn't a rookie. Yeah, there was some weird inconsistencies there. The more chances these guys have to compete, the better I think the team in the league is.
All right. So I guess within the next, because the Steelers rookie mini camp, I'm assuming will begin a week from this coming Friday. So it shouldn't be too much longer here because there's still some of these camp invites leaking in even right now. The Steelers, one of those is going to be a punter, right? Who was the punter? The Toledo
Bailey
punter?
Flint, I believe was his name.
And who, let's see, obviously Pickett and Oladokin are going to be their quarterbacks. They might have one more quarterback arm come in, huh?
They could, yeah, but at least they have 2, which you could work with just 2 maybe.
Right. The Pitt wide receiver, and you had a little note about that of how you liked that Pitt wide receiver coming in.
Yeah, Trey Tipton. It's not Tasir Mack, who I thought maybe they could look at. He won, I believe, to the Saints. Trey Tipton didn't really play much for Pitt. I think he caught 11 passes last year. But I always kind of like, with a franchise quarterback, a first-round quarterback, bring in a teammate, a receiver of his, just so there's a familiar face to kind of throw to and be around. And I think it makes a lot of sense to do that for rookie minicamp. Of course, Pickett, most things will be familiar to him, so it's a little bit different than if he was going to a different team out of the state. But I always kind of like just bringing in a known guy for your quarterback.
All right, I've watched both the young running backs. I've talked enough about them already. The undrafted. You said you haven't really paid any attention to. You haven't gotten deep into that, but we got some profiles coming up on several of these guys on SteelersDepot.com this week.
Yeah, I know Jonathan, I think, has one on Tyree Johnson going up, I believe, later today or tomorrow. And I'm going to work on Chris Steele, which I thought was a draftable guy late on day 3 that I think could have some value. So speaking of Chris Steele, speaking of the Steelers roster, I know it's way too early, but I jumped at the chance to put together my initial Steelers roster predictions, as we usually do post-draft. I'll do another one before training camp and just to kind of run through my very, very, very early predictions and projections of how this roster will look. So we'll go through it here, starting with quarterback, the 3, Trubisky, Pickett, and Rudolph. Could somebody get traded? What will happen with Pickett? Depends on if he wins a starting job, those kinds of things. Sure, all those things are on the table, but I'm kind of keeping it very chalk for right now.
Yeah, the only question, and not that it matters, Jerry Dulac thinks Mason Rudolph will be dealt now. So Jerry Dulac must be beside himself. It's funny how his biases are creeping into his writing now.
Yeah, he also said the Steelers had first-round grades on 3 quarterbacks. I don't know what's true or not, but I do get the sense Pittsburgh was much higher on this quarterback class than the rest of the NFL was.
Yeah, since he lost his golf partners, Jerry seems a lot less as an insider now.
Yeah, so take that for whatever it's worth. But those are the 3 I'll stick with for now. Running backs, Running back's kind of a crapshoot. Put 3 on there: Najee Harris, Benny Snell. I'll take my shot there with Jalen Warren as being a squatty body, but kind of has this overall size Pittsburgh looks for. I really did not know who else to put on here. McFarland has to prove it to me.
You know what that we haven't talked about? Was Benny Snell the biggest winner on the Steelers roster in the 2022 NFL draft? Was that the single biggest winner, maybe?
Felt like him and maybe Edmonds as being the big winners, yeah.
Or Edmonds, Joe Haig. I don't. Maybe who are some of the biggest winners and losers that were already under contract with the Steelers coming out of the draft?
Yeah, it's a good. I think we hit on the big names.
Anthony Miller.
They draft 2 receivers. I don't know how you become a big winner in that scenario.
I'm saying loser.
Oh, loser. I'm sorry. You said loser. Yeah. Loser. I think Miller. Mason. I mean, Mason. He's probably regretting that 1-year contract he signed a year ago. He's probably like, well, this didn't work out because they just, clearly do not think Mason can start or play. So I think Mason might be the big loser. True
or false? He'll be on. You obviously predict him on the roster, I guess, but so you would have to answer true. This is going to have a funny way of playing itself out, but I won't be surprised now. There's some people even saying at this point now, look for Mason Rudolph to start. Something will have to have gone wrong if that happens.
Yeah, I don't know the scenario barring injury where Mason Rudolph starts over Trubisky and Pickett. Will he be on the roster? I'll say true for now, but it is very open-ended.
Right. Why Jalen Warren as the 3rd running back?
Didn't know who else to put on there, and Pittsburgh likes size. He was the biggest back on there. But again, I think they should go sign a veteran if they can go find somebody really cheap just to bring in something of value as a runner.
I will not be shocked one bit if they had a free agent running back here.
I'm not sure who that is, but
yeah,
it's a low bar to find somebody that can make this roster right now.
Right, and just maybe have a little bit of special teams. Maybe if you can just play on one special teams unit, up, back, or whatever. What have you. 2 fullbacks, Watt and Connor Hayward. You have.
Yeah, I know they're calling Connor Hayward a tight end, but I'm going to call him a fullback because I really think that's really what he is. So for now, I think there's a path where you could have both Watt and Hayward. They could be competing for the 2 dogs, 1 bone, sure, but there is a scenario to me where I think both make the roster.
All right, Freiermuth and Zach Gentry.
Yeah, only 2 tight ends. That's why I kept 2 fullbacks because I'm only keeping 2 tight ends. Kevin Rader back to the practice squad, and Freiermuth and Gentry are basically locks.
All right, you have 6 wide receivers, but Gunnar Olszewski is the who's the wide receiver?
Arnaz
Battle. Man, you can tell how I'm kind of this sickness is starting to play with my mind and all. I'm losing some of my memory here. Gunnar Olszewski is the new Arnaz Battle, special teams guy. Kind of hard to even gauge it to term him as a wide receiver right now. But you got Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Miles Boykin, and Gunnar Olszewski.
Yep, going with 6, a little bit heavy there. Could have gone 5, but I think it's probably the strength in one of the deeper groups right now.
3 offensive tackles.
Yep, more core 4 and Haig. Could you sign a veteran? Probably would look to do that. But as of right now, I think those are very clearly your 3 guys.
Boy, you don't want to get in a situation where Chaz Green is in there, hopefully.
No, you do not. Yeah.
Not at all. 3 guards. Dotson, Daniels, and LeGlue, huh?
LeGlue was the 53rd man I added to there because I really didn't know who else to add. So I figured, his versatility, his effort, they kind of like him as a person, as that 9th offensive lineman. I think that's a fair argument to make there.
And you have 3 centers, which obviously all 3 of these guys can play guard too. So those, there's some definitely position flexibility in there. Kendrick Green, Mason Cole, and J.C. Hassenauer.
Yeah, you could lump this together and just call it interior offensive line. The Dotson, Daniels, LeGlue, Green, Cole, and Hassenauer. How it will all shake out is to be determined.
If you're to add 1 less interior guy and 1 more tackle guy, what would be the guy to go and what would be the guy to add?
Well, the guy I would take off is LeGlue. The tackle to add is a free agent, a placeholder spot. Because what veteran? I'm not putting Chaz Green on here, so I don't know who else to put on this list.
All right. Maybe that's something to root for with some of these undrafted guys, right?
Yeah, Tucker. Maybe Tucker. His resume seems to be interesting, but I just haven't learned a lot about him so far.
All right, defense really technically, I guess, all chalk for the most part, but you don't have Stephon Tuitt in here. You have some cold feet about Stephon Tuitt, do you not?
Yeah, I still think he could come back. I mean, the team's been optimistic, but until he says I'm coming back, I'm going to leave him off for the purpose of this exercise. It also made my life a bit easier trying to construct a 6 defensive lineman to put on there. So it was a little bit of the path of least resistance to put to it off the list.
All right. If Tuitt was on this list of Cam Hayward, Worley, Loudermilk, Leal, Alualu, and Montravius Adams, does anybody come off?
I think they might go 7. I don't know who you take off. I mean, as you say, these things have a funny way of working themselves out, and injury and who knows what could happen may change that, but they might go 7.
4 outside linebackers, and you could only put 4 because you would have had a hard time coming up with a 5th.
Right.
So you win by default there. Alex Kozora by technical knockout. With this TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Jannard Avery, Derek Tuska. They have got to do something there, man. This is going to be another bug up my you-know-what for the next most of the offseason here.
Sure. Again, you could see a veteran come in the way that you saw Ingram come in last year. Who that guy's going to be, went through some of the names on Sunday. Not the most attractive list, but I would watch out for Alex Okafor or Pernell McPhee as to me being some of the most logical fits.
One of the things that nobody's going to get 100% right this offseason is the inside linebackers, I do not believe. Miles Jack, Devin Bush, Robert Spillane, Marcus Allen, UG3, a lot of OGs in there, if you will.
It's a very crowded off-ball linebacker room. You're right. I left off Buddy Johnson, who's got to prove his spot in his second year. Left off 7th-round pick Mark Robinson. I counted out UG3 last year. I won't count him out for right now. The other guys, Spillane, Allen, have been more core special teams guys.
You've got 6 cornerbacks, but you do have DeMonte Casey, which is really a slash guy. In there, and you got a rookie undrafted free agent and Chris Steele in there as well too. So talk about the 10 defensive backs as a whole here.
Yeah, the 4 safeties, Minka, Edmonds, Norwood, and Killebrew, pretty chalk there. Yeah, I mean, the cornerback room's interesting. You know, I didn't have Pierre or Millette on here. They're certainly going to be in the mix, so we'll see what happens. Wanted to be a little bit different, putting Chris Steele, calling a UDFA, making the team similar to what happened with Pierre. He's going to need to play better this summer, this camp, and Millette, with all the slot options they've added in Casey and Norwood in his second year. Will Millette kind of get squeezed out? Obviously, he was re-signed, but no guarantee he makes the roster. So that's a fluid situation there. Justin Lane, you know, his days of playing cornerback are over, but he has done well enough as a gunner.
Wow. I'll be disappointed if Justin Lane has to make this roster again.
It's Danny Smith, you know, banging the table for the last couple of guys, and he's been able to get a hat consistently. And again, as a corner, there's no value, but they got corners in front of him that he doesn't have to play anymore. And 10 for this team to keep 10 defensive backs. I mean, that's you wouldn't think the number's going to go higher than that, you know, for sure. Yeah, I mean, have they gone 11 before? I'd have to look. 11 would feel like the max, but 10 seems to be the more realistic number.
Right. Specialist, you're going all chalk here with incumbents Boswell, Presley Harvin III, and Christian Coots.
Harvin will have to punt well. He could be competing against the waiver wire this summer, but for now, I'll put him on there.
Okay. Rattle off your practice squad.
Yeah, it's a 14-man practice squad this year, I believe, too, which is what it was supposed to be pre-COVID. Now they're going back to that. So Oladokin, Mateo Durant, a running back, 2 tight ends, Kevin Rader, Jay Sternberger, 2 receivers, Cody White, Anthony Miller, 2 offensive linemen, Jordan Tucker, Chris Owens, 2 defensive linemen, Henry Mondeau and Carlos Davis, an edge and Tyree Johnson, 2 corners, James Pierre, Isaiah Johnson, and safety Donovan Steiner.
All right, it'll be fun these are always fun to look back way after the fact here. I'm going to guarantee you that you're not going to hit all 53 here.
I'll guarantee your guarantee is correct. I don't think it'll happen, and I'll have a new one before camp. But it's fun to think about the roster. Also, kind of helps you process. Okay, where are some of the weaknesses of this team? And you can see it at tackle, you can see it at the edge depth, running back. Kind of get a clearer picture to where this roster may need to add to prior to training camp.
Has anybody told you yet that this sucks?
I haven't looked at the comments too much, but I'm sure there's one sitting there.
All right. Well, let me be the first and tell you it sucks to get that out of the way.
All right. Well, thank
No,
you.
I'll try to do one of these as well too. They're so incredibly hard, and you're trying to look long term and project, and people don't like you to put in their player not yet on a roster.
Right.
Which tends to be the case a lot of times in this as well too here. So job well done.
All right. Thank you. Anything else?
I was kidding about the other.
I know it's fine. Yeah, all good.
Louis
Anything
Riddick.
else? Yeah, Louis Riddick was the keynote speaker at Pitt over the weekend. Talked briefly about the GM job. Obviously, didn't say much, and we'll see if he comes in for a second round of interviews. But talked about how much it would mean to him. Obviously, as a guy who went to Pitt to become the Steelers GM.
Boy, I wonder if he can get the internet to erase some of those comments that he had made a couple of years ago about Ben Roethlisberger and his criticizing of Kevin Colbert when Kevin Colbert used the term kids. Remember all that?
Vaguely, but I don't think Colbert's going to be vindictive. He probably forgot about that himself, or doesn't. They didn't care that much to bring him in for an interview. If they really were that upset about it, they wouldn't have brought him in the first place.
I just think he's got too strong of a personality. I wonder about that with Riddick, and look, he was obviously kind of careful to what he said about the Steelers draft class, right? Because he didn't want to focus on that. I mean, if you can't do your job one way because you're worried about another job, should you be doing the other job at all?
Yeah, I mean, he made sure to praise though Pickett. I think he didn't want to like downplay Pickett in case he gets the job. Then he has comments about his thoughts on Pickett. Maybe he genuinely likes the guy. I think
you see where I'm going with that, right? I mean, if you can't do your job because afraid of backlash for a future job?
I think his point was saying he didn't want to focus too much on the Steelers because he didn't want to, because he understands there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there. So he wanted to treat the Steelers like it was any other team he was not currently interviewing for.
Okay.
And I get that. I mean, for the personality thing, some of that's probably TV where you're playing it up because you want big, strong personalities. But to me, it's not a concern. It's about what you can do with a job. And, Tomlin has a big, strong personality as well. And that's worked very well in his favor.
Would you consider him a favorite outside of the two internals in Brandon Hunt, Omar Khan?
It's really hard for me to list out favorites for external candidates because what's your criteria to go off of? How these guys interview and how they interact are things we don't know. Would I consider him a favorite for the job? Probably not. I think it's Hunt. You look at Khan, some of the outside guys would be Weidel from the Eagles, Wojciechowski from, I think, Tampa Bay he's at. Some of those Pitt guys that have some more ties to the team itself. So those maybe are some of the guys I would look at as favorites, but really trying to predict and rank them is tough to do.
All right, shall we get to do some emails?
Yep, let's do it and close out today's show. Reminder, we'll have our live stream tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time as well to recap the 2022 NFL Draft.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. We'll be doing a lot of talking tonight, too. All right, Jonathan Mason writes in, Dave, I'd give this draft a B+. Favorite picks are definitely Pickens and Austin. He says, I was a big Austin fan pre-Senior Bowl. He says, I was thinking they would draft a edge or cornerback, so I guess inside linebacker instead of either of those was a bit of surprise. He says, thanks for the great coverage, Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan. Matt writes in, first off, unbelievable Steelers coverage as always. I love the draft, but you guys make it all the better with the best content around. Thank you, Matt. Just a quick question. How comfortable do you feel at the offensive tackle position? Matt, Dan Moore did okay as a rookie, and Chooks, quite frankly, is average at best. He writes, the lack of depth at this position scares me even more than edge. He says that at least there you had the defensive player of the year in Watt and a really good player in Highsmith on the other side. Here's the hope, and the Steelers do something in the coming weeks. He says, peace and love, and never forget how impactful your work is to listeners. Thank you for that, Dugan from Conet Lake, PA. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, with K-O at Conowit, I want to say it is.
Conowit. It's Conneaut. I'm not familiar with that.
I think that's maybe out east, but
all right.
I'm not sure.
Look, we just went down Alex's prediction of 53-man roster, and his three tackles on there are Dan Moore, Chukwuma Okorafor, and Joe Haig. Yeah, it's okay to be concerned about that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Moore, I think, will play well, and obviously they were high enough on a core for to bring him back. And Haig is a capable swing guy. Like, you're comfortable. He can play those spots, but how well is the question. So, I mean, you could add to it, but I could also see, even if you add to it, those top three being the top three for week one.
All right, but there could be somebody else
Sure.
in the mix there, and somebody.
Yeah, one
with
guy goes
experience.
down, then you're really in a tough spot. So I think you're going to protect yourself.
Let's see here. Christian Botch writes in from Denmark. As you asked during the latest podcast, I would be more than happy to give you my own default draft take. I would give the Steelers a B+ for the offensive potential in the receivers and counting on Pickett being their guy, but I would also have liked to see them drafting an offensive lineman to give Pickett and Najee the best opportunities to succeed. Thank you for a great show, especially during this draft period where good quality info about prospects can be hard to come by in my area of the world, as college ball is not at all closely followed. Keep up the good work. And here we go. And once again, that's Christian from Denmark. Thank you, Christian from Denmark. It's amazing. You look at all these emails coming in from all over the world like that. Here's a good one for one Alex Kozora right here from Andreas. Hey guys, would you rather have Mac Jones or Kenny Pickett as your future starter? How about that for a question?
I'll take Jones. I was a lot higher. We didn't have the grading system last year, but I think in my head I would have had a much higher grade on Jones than Kenny Pickett.
Here's my problem in that is I did not go as deep on Mac Jones as I did the 5 other guys in this class. Nor did I feel the need to, and I definitely didn't go as deep in that class last year as Alex did. And Alex came out of that with Mac Jones as his clear favorite quarterback in that draft class. It's really tough for me to answer because I get an incomplete on that. That's why I said this is a great question for Alex Kozora.
Yeah, I just thought, I was impressed by Jones, his pocket presence, his overall really supreme accuracy, the way he ran that offense. Obviously, there's a lot of talent around him, but I think the Patriots are very happy with their selection of Mac Jones.
Right. I hate to kind of punt on there. I mean, my gut to be honest with you, my gut tells me to take Pickett in that, but once again, I didn't watch enough Mac Jones, and I know I'm not going to go back now and go down that rabbit hole just yet to watching Mac Jones, Alabama. I watched a little bit of it, but nowhere close to the amount that Alex did there. It's a good question though, is it not?
It is. Yeah, I think there are similarities in their games, so I understand why that question would be asked.
Edward Arnold writes in, drafting a review at this point, so on to the next GM. What are your thoughts on Louis Riddick at the end of the coverage of the first round? To me, looked oddly satisfied. The Steelers took Pickett. Maybe part of the narrowing down process of GM was linked to which quarterback the team landed. As always, thanks for what you do. Hopefully the Steelers did not pick a quarterback out of the University of Pittsburgh because of Riddick potentially being the team's next GM and Riddick's ties to the University of Pittsburgh. I hope that was not the case.
Yeah, that would be really bad process if it was, and I can't imagine Pittsburgh would be so reckless they would make a decision like that.
I get where you're coming from there, Edward, but Lord have mercy. Let's hope that was not the case. Nick Shuley, which pick from this year's draft was your favorite? He says, also, my girlfriend and I broke up on Saturday night, and I need a good breakup song to help me cope. Any suggestions? Have you ever gone through any bad breakups and have any breakup songs?
We've already have been off the rails enough on this show. I'm like audibly backing away from this question.
All right.
I mean, I don't know what he's looking for. Is he looking for something to try to cheer him up or to embrace the sadness of that? If you're looking, I have nothing for the cheery part. I would not take Dave's suggestion in jest. I would recommend, if you want to really go sad, some Junior Kimbrough, old blues musician from Mississippi. He's got some very sad, love lost type of songs. So go pull up Junior Kimbrough.
Yeah, I think any country song would qualify as well too, right? Get your truck back, your car back, your dog back, and your girl back. Isn't that how every country song goes?
Yeah, what's the one? What's it by Brooks and Dunn? They got a song, Neon Moon, Brooks and
I'm
Dunn.
not
That's a
familiar
good
with
one.
that. Not
If you
familiar with
heard, I
that.
think you'd be familiar
Okay.
with it.
Which pick from this year's draft was your favorite?
Like I said, the receivers are my favorite. I mean, Pickens and Austin. Pickens, I think we'll have some growing up to do, so there's a little concern there. But I think overall, the value and the talent and the fit were best with Pickens and Austin.
Pickens with me. I really wanted that one to come to fruition. So Pickens would be my favorite pick so far. Recapping everything there. Let's see here. Annoyed fan. He says he has a major issues with the draft. Please hear me out. The problem is not who they selected in the draft, but why they chose to scout those positions. This feels like the feel-good type of draft, the hometown kid, and then Cam Hayward's brother. They did not address any defensive back position, which is unacceptable considering we have mediocre players minus Minka. I've always trusted the Steelers to make the right decision, and the Steelers have always tried to build from the trenches. Last year, our offensive line was the worst, and the run defense was horrible, and yet we ignored those positions in the draft. I know we got some average players in free agency and drafted Leal, but we have no elite players on either end other than an aging Hayward, he says. I think we would be drafting, I would think we would be drafting 10-year type of players that we could really develop or be solid starting black backups, but we chose to go with 2 quarterbacks, 2 wide receivers, an average defensive lineman, Connor, and a random linebacker who hasn't ever played linebacker. Since we typically never resign our own wide receiver or running back to second contracts other than Heath, TJ Watt, Minka, do you see any players on this team that true long-term prospects that could become elite building blocks for this team? Most of the team seems like a stopgap player that is just average. Last point as an example, the Eagles drafted Tyler Linderbaum, which I assume would be the replacement to Jason Kelsey, he says, when he retires, which is a smart way to draft and not filling holes last minute. Let the player grow and sit behind a vet, he says. This is what the Steelers did before. Instead of building a team, we are constantly filling many holes with average type players, a.k.a. drafting Mason, realizing he's not the answer, then not getting a replacement for Ben 2 to 3 years ago. Same thing with Pouncey, he says. Signs were pointing to him retiring, yet we chose a fungible running back instead of Creed Humphrey. Sorry to be negative, but I wanted to know your thoughts on this draft philosophy. Again, I'm not talking about players drafted, but rather the positions, and the Steelers decided to scout for pre-draft visits. Go ahead, Alex.
I mean,
Brant is very unhappy.
Yeah, I don't think I'm changing your mind, Brant, with any
That's
answer
a
I give.
strongly worded letter to the makers of the Titanic, is it not?
That sounds like I just went through a bad breakup. Here's my rant about the Steelers draft for the other guy that emailed us in. He said Linderbaum went to the Eagles. Is that what he said?
I thought he did.
Can you? Because he went to Baltimore.
Okay, well maybe he meant yeah, he got it wrong. He says the Eagles drafted Tyler Linderbaum, which I assume maybe he's thinking about the kid that they drafted last year. Landon Dickinson, didn't he go?
He did, but they drafted Cam Jurgens in the second one, I think, as Kelsey's replacement, just for clarity's sake there. Anyway, listen, I'm not going to change your mind on this. I think I understand the point about positions and looking towards the future and stuff like that, but the focus really needs to be on the players themselves. And like, are they talented guys that are going to help this team? Will these guys turn into big building blocks down the road? I think Pickens has the potential to, Pickett, we'll see what happens there. The other guys, I kind of get your point on, but I think you're focusing a little too much on positional type stuff and not on the actual players themselves.
Let's see. Since You've Been Gone, Kelly Clarkson. That's a good. I love that song. And
did you really?
Yeah,
you didn't strike me as the American Idol Kelly Clarkson.
And I'm not, but I absolutely love that song. And the problem is now that's the kind of song that for some reason out of the blue, it just gets into your head and you run around with it all day long. It just drives you absolutely crazy. How about some No Doubt, Don't Speak. Are you old enough to know who No Doubt is? Gwen Stefani and all?
I know Gwen Stefani. I don't think I know that song.
Okay.
Not by the title.
Yeah, Don't Speak from No Doubt. You'd like that.
Yeah. No, I think I know the song. Yeah, it's the Don't Speak's in the chorus, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Trying to think of some other breakup songs here off the top of my head. But anyway, that's not a happy email from our guy there. So you're probably not going to be able to change his mind with him. Let's see. Larissa, great unmatched draft coverage. As always, I want to ask a question. The Kenny Pickett fake slide. Why was that even a problem? I thought the whole point of football is to outsmart the competition. What is wrong with him fake sliding? Is there a rule that does not allow this? Another question. While I don't mind the picks made, what I don't understand is why the Steelers did not draft a safety. They clearly don't think Edmonds and Casey are long-term options since they didn't get signed to long-term deals that are cheap. So why not invest in a safety that can learn? It didn't really make sense to me. That's the email there. Look, there's nothing wrong with the Kenny Pickett fake slide. At the time, it was, I guess technically legal. It's not legal anymore. And look, I caught hell from it immediately after it happened because you can't criticize Pitt players on Twitter when you cover the Steelers, evidently. I just thought it was Bush League. I thought he should have been ruled down because the player definitely gave up there. And I, without going back down this whole rabbit hole, Alex and I think talked at the time about there, you want to protect the player, right? And the players let up. You don't want these guys to get quarterbacks specifically to get knocked out of games because, going down sliding, a player lets up and then the player, it was a good fake slide. It was one of the best fake slides you'll ever see, ever.
Are there others? I'm not even sure if there's been other fake slides.
I don't know, but it was Bush League, if you ask me, Larissa, and that's what I said right out of the chute.
Yeah, I mean, to me,
it's not a reflection. It's not me taking issue with Kenny Pickett. It could have been Joe Blow, doing it. I don't hold anything negative to Kenny Pickett because he tried a fake slide. All right. So I want to get that out there. There's no grudge of me saying, you know what, it'd been okay. Steelers take that Kenny Pickett had he not faked, had that fake slide, there. I just thought the play in general was kind of Bush League.
I didn't have a problem with it. I understand the point of people who did. It's obviously that it's now illegal, so it's moot. Pittsburgh, nothing to do with Pittsburgh drafting him, so haven't really thought about it too much anymore. That's a question that feels more appropriate from several months ago. In terms of safety, I get it, but I think they wanted to take receiver at the top, and then those safeties went off the board pretty quickly. So the group got pretty thin by even the third round, I would say.
Before people moot me, happy post-draft Monday, Dave and Alex. Philip writes in, Phil in Phoenix. I've been summing up the Steelers draft as I really like the players that were drafted, blah, blah, blah. Best example of that for me is Pickens. I really like the player, but I'd have popped both hamstrings running to the podium to turn in the card with Travis Jones' name on it at 52, he says. Overall, I'd give the draft a B+ grade. It seems like the Steelers generally drafted guys who they had targeted, but also maybe reached a little bit in terms of where they took a few of the players, Pickett included, he says. On the other hand, although you guys don't need my endorsement to borrow from Tomlinism, your draft coverage gets an A+++, like Ralphie's theme in A Christmas Story. Great draft season by the whole Depot squad. Appreciate you guys. Phil in Phoenix.
Yeah, thank you for that. Travis Jones was interesting. I think he would have been a good fit. Pittsburgh, for whatever reason, really did not show much interest in him. So I'm not surprised he was not on their radar, but I think he should have been.
All right, you got to get to a radio interview. We got a lot of work to do on the site, so we better wrap it up here at about the 2-hour mark. You can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. You like what we do and want to go to donate or anything, go to SteelersDepot.com and find all that jazz there, upper right corner navigation bar. So in the meantime, we'll be back on Wednesday. Who knows? Maybe we'll have some roundtable again, Alex.
Yeah.
to go Wednesday and Thursday to go talk to some of our guys about their thoughts on some of these picks and undrafted free agents. There might be a good time to hear from someone other than Dave and Alex in these circumstances. Until then, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.